can preparing the live stream, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Dear all, I, Hariram Agrawal, on behalf of Central Kolkata CA Association, welcome both the learned speakers in the joint webinar organized by CK Central Kolkata CA Association as well as Views Exchange for resolving the queries of members while they are on bank audit assignment. This is the peak time when the bank audit assignments are getting done, and the persons, all the members who have not yet completed are certainly facing some problems. That's why they are getting it delayed. And we have got learned speakers who will be guiding us through all their queries so that they can comfortably conclude their audit assignments. We welcome all the participants who have joined this today's webinar. Thank you. Hand over to Nitesh.
Naveen, I think we request you to kindly introduce DC Jain ji.
Sir, without wasting any time, actually, sir is the chairman, is the ex-chairman of SIRC and has immense experience in bank audit. And without wasting any much time, since we have only half an hour, I would request all the panelists to kindly start the proceedings and answer the questions.
So with these, may I request members to kindly unmute themselves and ask question.
Mr. Sri Prakash has raised hand, so let us give the opportunity to Mr. Sri Prakash first to ask the questions. Let us start with query of Mr. Sri Prakash. Sri Prakash, please unmute yourself and ask the query. Are you here?
Sir, I think he's not there, but in the chat box, we have some questions, sir, if we can take them up, sir.
So any other member who can live ask questions, unmuting themselves, otherwise we will be taking the queries in the chat box. Okay, Naveen, let us take the queries in the chat box.
Yes, sir.
For the benefit of all the members who have joined.
Sudeep Kunduji has asked that, do branch auditors need to do tax audit while compiling LPR online? Last year, there were hard copies to sign. So, question नहीं थोड़ा सा अजीब है.
Sir, I think none of the PSU banks are asking us to do tax audit, as far as my understanding is going.
Yes.
Unless there is one or two banks who are still continuing, they are all done away with tax audit to be done by statutory auditors. It's all taken centrally.
Thank you, sir. And Avdesh Kumarji has asked that, being a currency chest branch, there was shortage detected at the time of remittance by the RBI, say amount rupees 10 lakhs. RBI debited the branch by rupees 10 lakh. Branch nullified the entry by debiting suspense account and reflected in YSA. Investigation is in progress for fixation of liability of custodian, and branch has not debited to charges account. Is it a matter of MOC?
So I think, let me answer that query. Last time also there was a similar query. See, please understand there are two things involved here. One is there is a mandatory reporting of fraud here. So if you look at the Master Circular of Fraud, it says that in case there is a cash shortage and the cash shortage is of more than 10,000 rupees, if in case it is detected by the branch themselves, and in case it is more than 5,000 rupees, which is detected by the auditor or an inspecting officer, then in that case, it is mandatory to report it as a fraud. There is no choice given to the bank in this regard. Whether, even if it is a mistake, then also it is mandatory to report this as a fraud. So one, you need to check whether the reporting of fraud has been done. Now, this is the first aspect of it. The second aspect is whether the suspense account has been debited. So now suspense account would be reflecting under the head of other assets under the balance sheet. Now, this do not represent an asset for the bank. So unless until the bank gives you any explanation in terms of that the recovery would happen from ultimately from the the account of some employee, unless until that is given, this cannot be considered as an asset to the bank. And of course, because 10 lakh is not a small amount also, it will be a material amount at the branch level. You need to provide a MOC for writing off or making a provision for this amount. So this cannot continue as an asset in the books of the branch. So they can continue with the investigation. That is something different. That is the part of the bank. They would do the investigation to understand where the issue actually happened. But this cannot continue as an asset to the bank. And in case there is no explanation which is provided otherwise, this needs to come through a MOC, or in case they are not agreeing to put a MOC, this becomes part of your qualification in the main statutory audit report also. So this you can take accordingly.
Sir has also put in his response in the chat box. Thank you so much, sir, for that. And in case any participant has any question, you can unmute yourself and ask the questions immediately. We have 24 minutes to go. If anyone has any question.
Hariramji, you had some question, huh? You can ask, please.
Sir, Nagarmal Agarwal is asking, in case of demand loan for 1 year, whether interest can be paid at the end of the year or have to pay timely?
So, sir, again, see, when whatever loan the bank has given, there would be a sanction note, and the sanction note has to clearly specify that what is the terms and condition attached to the loan. They have not specified that this demand loan is against what security. So I am assuming it is not against something like FD or NSC or LIC where the NPA norms do not apply. So even in cases where the interest is not being serviced, the account would not slip into NPA category. But because he has not specified the security, so in case it is other than those cases, then the sanction letter has to clearly spell out whether there is a need for say payment of the interest or not. And in case the interest payment is required and it is not made, the payment is not made, then in that case, of course, the account can slip into NPA category also. But ultimately, whether the servicing is required or not, it would be determined from the sanction letter. And let me also point out here that RBI requires as a mandatory requirement that in every agreement between the bank and the borrower, clearly the date of the repayments, in case they are EMIs, the amount of EMI, the dates of EMI are to be mentioned. The SMA NPA classifications, how it would happen with examples have to be mentioned mandatory. In case there is a moratorium, the exact moratorium period with the exact date when the moratorium would expire and the repayment would start have to be mentioned clearly in the agreement itself. And the date has to be mentioned, not only month. So this becomes important because when we talk about 90 days norms, say only a month is written, then there is a problem because if see the installment is due on 1st January, then the account would slip into NPA category if it is not paid by 31st March. But if the installment is due on 31st January, then the 90 days norms would not be met. So it is very important that the exact due date should be mentioned. And this is a mandatory condition as per the RBI guidelines. And in case it is not so mentioned in the agreement, the examples even for SMA NPA classification, how that would happen with examples, then it is important point which you should bring out through your LFA. This is something I think is relevant here. In case you have any other query in terms of if you mention the security, then we can answer it more elaborately.
In fact, as
Kumar ji,
Nitesh you rightly said,
you
the
also
date
agree with
is
that?
the crucial factor. Hariramji, I would like to add one thing. Here, the
Yeah.
date is very crucial factor because previously what happened, the end of the month was taken as the date of NPA. Now the RBI circular is very clear that the date on which it is due, that 90 days has lapsed, that account becomes NPA and it is that date which has to be concurred and not the end of the month. So where it is end of the month, I think end of the year is too far a stretch actually.
True.
one more question in chat box. Naveen, take up. Naveen ji, take up the question in chat box.
Yes, sir. I was actually muted. Is Jilani committee or Ghosh committee report possible to verify? Many points are not relevant.
So again, I'll say, sir, one, if you look at the guidance note of the institute, it provides you a kind of a reporting format which you can use basically for reporting in case they do not provide. Because what happens in case of Jilani and Ghosh is a lot of times the answer cannot be given into yes or no or not applicable. Like I can tell you an example where we find this problem is that it talks about safekeeping of checks between the branch and the processing center. Now, this I cannot verify because for safekeeping, I need to go with that person who is delivering that checks to the processing center. Check whether he is actually not sitting somewhere, not keeping that bag which he's using for transportation, whether it is locked or not. So, a lot of things need to be verified. Sometimes the answer cannot be given in yes, no, or not applicable format. So, it becomes important that you can use that reporting format which has been prescribed, and wherever you are not able to give an explanation, you can use that reporting format for giving an explanation. One. Secondly, there are many points which are still relevant, sir. So I remember as part of AASV, uh, uh, I think no, as part of PDC, our present president formed a committee. I was fortunate enough to be part of the committee to basically go for verification of the Ghosh and Jilani committee report to see how many points are actually relevant to the branch auditors. And when we actually verified that report, we found out that a lot of points are actually relevant, which the branch auditor should verify. I can tell you one very important point, which this time I've been speaking in many seminars, and I told specifically to verify that point, which is in regard to there is a specific question in regard to BG being printed on security paper. Now, BGLCs being printed on security paper serially numbered, it asks you. And generally, we are not even aware whether this is a relevant guideline or what is expected from us. So generally, what I've been telling people is that this one is a relevant guidelines. BG needs to be printed on a security paper serially numbered. So what it basically means is like we have a FD. So there is a FD form which is there, which is serially numbered, which is provided to the branch by a centralized printing center. And through this printing and the control over that inventory, we are able to check how many FDRs have been actually printed. Similarly, we need to have a printed inventory for BGs, which are to be provided in 3 copies. One is for the beneficiary, one is for the applicant, and third is for the branch. Why it is so important? Because please see that there are a lot of frauds which have occurred in the banking industry where because the BGs generally the public sector banks print on a stamp paper, and the stamp paper can easily be procured from anywhere. So a lot of times what has happened is that the stamp papers have been procured by the that person, the applicant from outside, and the BGs were signed and delivered by the branch manager or the branch officers without actually entering that in the system. So these kind of frauds have occurred, and this can result into a liability for the bank, which you may not be aware of. So this is the control mechanism which the RBI has provided. So this is a very relevant guideline which you should check. And in case, generally what I've seen is public sector banks not following it. So you should mark it as no rather than marking it as yes. So sometimes we are not aware of the guideline, what exactly is required to be checked and what is the relevance of that guidelines. So it is actually a very relevant report. Of course, some of the points are actually with the change in the technology have become irrelevant, but whatever is irrelevant, you can mention as NA or no, or and then you can use that report format to describe whatever is your comment. But there are many relevant points which you should answer appropriately.
Thank you so much, sir. Hariram ji, आपके पास कोई question है? Do you have
Yeah.
any? Yes, please.
There was one borrower. He was having housing loan balance of say around 15 lakhs in the last week of say March. At that time, CCOD was sanctioned for 30 lakhs, of which he deposited 15 lakh to this housing loan account and cleared on made it zero housing loan account out of the proceeds of the money of which he have received in the loan account. So whether it will be treated as greening this green of this loan account, or whether it will certainly it is a diversion of fund, because it is CCOD is for the purpose of business, but it has been utilized for the repayment of loan, housing loan, that is. So what else reporting or is required in that case?
Hariram ji, sir, मेरे हिसाब से ना इसमें I think there are two things which you need to check. See, because CCOD account, whether there is any introduction of capital by that person from his own pocket, or it is only through that CCOD account, whatever disbursement has been received from the bank, that has been utilized for payment of that housing. So if there is some introduction of capital which has been utilized for the purpose of repayments, he may have put it through the CCOD account, which is still inappropriate, but would not amount to a diversion if there is a infusion of funds from the promoter. In case there is no infusion of funds from the promoter and the amount given for CCOD has been utilized for the repayment of the housing loan, it amounts to a diversion of fund. And let me be very, very specific when I talk about diversion of fund. The RBI circular on master circular on frauds actually says that in case there is a diversion of, then that diversion itself may amount to a fraud. So that's a very, very serious thing, diversion of fund, because in NPAs, most of the cases you will see that first there is a diversion of fund and then the account becomes an NPA. So it is a very, very critical factor, sir, and would amount to a evergreening person.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions. Though we have limited questions today, in case you have anything to say or add on or have any kind of other inputs, you can go ahead with that, because हमको लगता नहीं है participants will ask more questions. So
Sri Prakash has raised hand. Sri Prakash ji,
yes,
please. Sri Prakash ji, please unmute and ask question.
No, actually, उनका starting से ही होके रखा है raise hand. I think
anyone wants to ask question, please raise. Please ask.
It is a wonderful opportunity. So, we can clear all our doubts.
In the meantime, I can add one more thing, which is very particularly, which somebody actually asked me a question. A lot of time people actually call up and then ask questions. So what I have been seeing is that a lot of times in case of under construction property, what we have seen is that say the property was purchased, there was a flat which was purchased for say 4 crores, and a housing loan was given of 3.5 crores for financing of that property. Now the property is under construction, but the full disbursement of 3.5 crores has been done. So please mark here that there is a RBI circular specifically on this, which says that in all these cases, the disbursement has to happen based upon the construction link. So it cannot be upfront. The full amount cannot be disbursed upfront. It has to be linked with construction. So in cases you are finding, especially you will find that in housing loans, that there has been an upfront payment in an under construction property. That is something which is not as per the RBI guidelines, and you can point it out specifically in your audit reports. So this is specifically I saw there was, I think, 4 or 5 queries which came only on this point itself from different members. So I thought I should share with all members in case somebody may have seen such an issue, they can actually bring it out through their report.
Lokesh, I'm sharing one query which one member had asked today. If you can throw your light on one.
Right, please.
I've just put in the chat box. I'll read it for you. It says, with regards to accounts, the bank is buying advances in tranches, say 200 crores, 300 crores from various NBFCs. The bank holds 90% and 10% is the contribution from that respective NBFC. Now the banks have authorized these NBFCs for collection of the monthly dues and this collection in the are happening in the tranches, and the bank appropriates towards the interest and principal on cash basis actually, and not on accrual basis. Is it right? Because I feel the moment a loan is given to whomsoever, because I think there are targets these banks are having for the priority sectors, and they're using this mechanism to see that there is somebody else who does, and they're able to take this as a package. You can throw some light.
Actually, we need to actually understand the agreement which is there between the bank and the NBFC or MFI in this regard. The relevant guidelines are covered. There is a specific RBI circular on transfer of loan exposures, which actually talks about what would be the guideline. They talk about the framework on this, and they talk about what would it talks about in case the account was already in NPA in the books of the transferring bank. Then what would be the status in the hand of the bank which is overtaking that loan? Then it talks about the concept of there can be two issues here. One is the bank which is taking over the loan would start recovery themselves, or they would be dependent upon the bank which is actually transferring that loan. Then they also talks about that the bank which is transferring the loan has to transfer it completely. They cannot keep a risk that we would be liable for in case there is no repayment which is coming. So there are a lot of issues which are there, and it's quite a elaborate circular on this point. So unless until we understand what is the agreement under which that transfer has happened, would be very difficult to answer it on a random basis actually. So the best way to, in case somebody has to look out for it, that they look out for that circular which is on transfer of loan exposures actually. So there is a master circular on that, and that would actually help them in understanding how this has to be taken care of. Because there are three major issues. One is in case it is already in NPA in their books, what would be status in their book? In case there is a default thereafter, then who is responsible for it? Whether there is any charges which is to be paid to the other bank for collection of that loan. So there are many issues which are attached to this, which once we go through that master circular, we'll be able to understand that specifically. Also issues, Naveen ji.
Yes.
I think most of the members have already completed the audit actually.
Yeah.
So, members, any question, please? You can ask. Last question, last one or two question we can take.
नवीन जी चैट बॉक्स में कुछ पेंडिंग है क्या या ऑल क्लियर?
No, nothing is pending, sir.
Okay, nice.
So I think then may I request Naveen Singhal to kindly offer formal vote of thanks on behalf of all of us.
Thank you so much, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you, sir, you are working very hard for the professional development of the members. And second, I would like to thank Hariram ji and both the speakers who have really answered all the questions perfectly. And in spite being so late, you have answered all the questions so nicely, and we are looking forward for you on Saturday also. So I think we can, sir, end the session, sir. Thank you so much, all of you, and all the participants also. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, all the delegates, participants.
Thank you, Lokesh ji, Dungar ji.
See you on the Saturday again.
हाँ, जिनका बचा हुआ होगा कुछ भी किसी कारण से अटका हुआ होगा, we will try to resolve them.
ठीक है, सर.